Solomon's Temple. And the reason for the thievery of the history of the chosen people of Elu, and also the reason for Satan's deception, and for Satan's thievery. And the reason for his Tartarianism, and the cover-up of E's people technology, and their marvelous works and achievements in building and architecture. And the reason for their stolen inheritance of E's chosen people and their marvelous antiquated ornamental buildings, and their furnishings. 1 Kings chapter 7 verse 13, and King Solomon sent a messenger to the king of Naphtali, and to fetched Hiram Abif the master architect and builder Hiram, and whom came out and builded the temple and king's palace in Jerush, and Elu'hymn, which was before times known as the city of Rome, by using domesticated animals, and with airships and with hoops and with tires, and timber and hewed, stones and marble, and brass and iron. And Hiram was the son of a widow, woman, from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a bailiff, but Hiram was a master architect who worked with airs hips and with hoops and tires. And Hiram was also a worker in brass, and he was skilled with the wisdom of ornamental building, and also in building decoration and in building columns, and also in pilaster, and in woodworking, and also in stonemason and brass working and in marble and granite furnishing. And also Hiram was knowledgeable in many other different fields. And also in the knowledge of how to build cities, and how to apply his knowledge in the building of temples, and other residential buildings. And he had the understanding of how to build airship and also how to use them. And he knew how to use them to hovering over newly constructed buildings, and to lift the building materials above them, and to build and assemble ornamental decors, and also how to transport many of the ornamental structures to the building site, and also how to assemble them. And he was the master architect in building many of the various ornamental structures, and on putting them together. And he was cunning in every field, and also in the use of sand hydraulic, and in the construction of wheel and tires as in their building and design, and also in the mechanics, and the construction of the Ferris wheel as it applies to building and construction. And also Hiram was knowledgeable in all kinds of works in brass. And he came to King Solomon, and he did wrought all his skills, because he cast 2 pillars of brass, of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. And he made 2 pilasters of molten brass, to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of the one pilaster was 5 cubits, and the height of the other pilaster was 5 cubits, and he built nets of checker work, and wreaths of chain work, for the pilasters which were upon the top of the pillars. And 7 for the one pilaster, and 7 for the other pilaster. And he made the pilaster pillars, and 2 rows round about upon the one network, to cover the pilasters that were upon the top, which were with pomegranates, and so did he for the other pilaster. And the pilaster that were upon the top of the pillars were of lily work in the porch, 4 cubits. And the pilaster was upon the 2 pillars which had antique ornamental decoration of pomegranates which was also above, and over against the belly which was by the network, and the pomegranates they were 200 in rows. And they were all round and about the columns and upon the other pilaster. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar, and called them by the name Jachin, and he set up the left pillar, and called them by the name Boaz, which were used for strength and stiffness and stability and uprightness and for spinning the wheels and the tries swiftly, thus establishing a fulcrum, and leverage and height. And upon the top of the pillars there was lily work, and so was all the pilasters and the artwork of the pillars were finished. And he made a molten sea, about 10 cubits from the one brim to the other, and it was round all about all of them, and their height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round them. And under the brim of it were round hoops, and these were the wheel and tires. And about them there were knobs compassing them, and they were 10 in a cubit, compassing the sea round about them. And the knots were cast in 2 rows, when it was cast. And it stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, and 3 looking toward the west, and 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east, and the sea was set above upon them, and all their hinder parts were inward. Thus Hiram used a team of 12 domesticated cattle or oxen to raise the pilaster and in the assembling of the columns to the building. Friends, since from the Tower of Babel, men have been building cities, and naming them after themselves, and also for their descendants. And this is why many of buildings that we have today have outlasted many of us. And for generations we have been wondering who built these antique cities, and these medieval and the Gothic and Romanesque buildings. And how come no one knows how to duplicate any of them today? Is it because the technology has since then have been lost? Friends, I believe that these buildings were built by many master architect like the master architect Hiram Abif. And whom was the master architect during the time of Solomon? And whom builded many of these major cities possibly some 3,000 years ago. Like many of the Gothic and medieval antiquated churches and cities and buildings that we have inherited around the world. Especially those in Rome, and Italy. And also those in the Great Britain. That they were all thought to be mystical, and awesome, and having Gothic-looking architecture, that they were builded by the thieving Tartarians. But who would have thought that according to the Bible that descendants of Cain, the descendants of Satan, that they would cousin us by claiming their ownership, and the rights and the glory and prestige of building these antiquated marvels. Which no doubt was built by the ancient Hebrews' descendants like Hiram Abif and others. Friends, I believe some of these great cities that they were built by many great ancient Hebrew architect like Hiram Abif. And many others. And we all have inherited them. But because many of these buildings have outlived many of us, that the generation that followed them have inherited them. Friends, Elu'hymn is the builder of nations. And many of these buildings, and the churches them that were built, that they were erected to honor Elu'hymn. And many of them were also built to honor and worship Satan, whom is called God. And also many were built to deify and revere a false god. But very soon we all would see the King. And many of these buildings they would all crumble down to the ground, and they would be no more. And when Elu'hymn would gather his chosen people into his holy city, in the end time, then we all would behold and his great and glorious New Jerusalem, which is glorious and which is out of this world. And all those who are his, they would inherit his holy city. And so shall we all ever be with the odd. But all these Tartarian cities or stolen cities that are left, they would be no more. When Elu'hymn shall come to establish his holy kingdom in his earth, they all would be in ruins. And all the kingdom of this world, those buildings which Satan and his descendants them have stolen from his people, they would be all gone, for his holy New Jerusalem, and his holy everlasting kingdom. Friends, it's time to get ready. He is certainly coming. Friends, our redemption and salvation is nigh. So let us beginning to get ready. Bless be Elu'hymn. The end, to be continued. Thank you.